Everyone, welcome to Defender Fridays. My name is Matt. I'll be your guest, your guest host. I'm gonna say. However, I'm feeling more like a co-host now. The amount of time I get to spend in this chair. Defender Fridays was put together by the team here at Lima Charlie. It's my pleasure to guide you through what's going to be some really cool kind of fireside chats. We obviously like to take a blue light side of things as opposed to a red offensive chat. So this is meant to focus on defenders and the cool things defenders do and how they do them and whatnot. We jump into the world of information security, talking about the defensive side. We bring seasoned professionals on from all over the industry. This may be folks who are experienced in all sorts of detection engineering, incident response, SOC operations, AI, you name it. We've got folks from all over the place. The goal is to kind of create a beautiful collaborative space where everyone's here to learn. Everyone's here to share, and our guests bring in some really cool topics. With that being said, we invite you to join us in all the conversations and hope you'll join us back every single week as well. And in all of this talking, I'm watching the feed and I see that a certain someone has joined us. There he is. Dude, you got a nice looking hat on there, Roberto. What's going on, my friend? How are you?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Dude, Roberto, your mic setup is legit, man. I'm staring at this, getting a little bit jealous over here. But man,
Thank you.
first off, you and I were doing this not what 2 weeks ago at
Yeah,
DEF CON. We had a little little makeshift stage going on, and then we got you back on the show for real. And I
yeah,
gotta say,
yeah,
you brought a
yeah.
bigger
Thank you very
audience
much.
this time.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. So I had a great time. So I was actually listening to the recording, and the audio was like in some areas was not there, but I understood that it's in the middle of the village and setting everything up and a lot of people around. So it was good. So it kind of
Yeah.
showed the heart of like what was actually going on around, right? Even though some people didn't probably see like the whole thing, right?
Dude, if we were at DEF CON and the recording was perfect, I think that would have actually taken away some of my street cred of been like, "Ooh, what the heck? Like, you got an audio recording studio up in DEF CON." It should have been a little chaotic to represent the environment. So, nonetheless, Roberto, we didn't want you to settle with that subpar quality. We wanted to give you a chance to get on the stage here and actually show off what's going on. So, sir, if you don't mind introducing yourself, because I think you've got something teed up to talk about today as well, right?
Oh yeah. So thank you. So my name is Roberto Rodriguez. I'm a principal security AI researcher at Microsoft. So that the title changed a little bit. Um, and let's see what else. I go by Cyber War Dog in the community. I love to share a lot of my open source work, and it's a way also to learn and also figure out if I truly understand, I guess, the fundamentals of what I'm trying to do as part of my research. So I highly encourage, people to do that. Try to build something, write a blog post, and that would at least gives you that context, I guess, for yourself to say, yeah, this kind of makes sense now. So that's what I love to do. And what else? And right now I'm leading a team at Microsoft of security researchers and also applied scientists to collaborate and to be able to see what autonomy means. How can we use AI, like autonomous agents, for investigations, right? How can we drive end-to-end investigations with LLM-based applications? And right now, we are, of course, in the exploratory stage, right? Trying to figure out what works, what doesn't. There is a lot of unknowns, right? There is not too many papers, too many blog posts or like tools out there. So, we're kind of trying to figure it out as we go. And yeah, so that's a little bit of me, my, introduction, and then we can probably dive to other topics that I was, thinking on sharing today. So.
Yeah, man, please do. Please do. So I don't want to like misrepresent anything like that. However, I think that you did give us a little bit of an audio taste when we were at DEF CON, but today you're going to be talking more about what your team's been able to do with LLMs and AI in some recent research of yours, right?
Yes, definitely. I mean, once again, we're still in the whole exploratory stage, but I think that there is some interesting things going on that I hope the community, right, could actually start also thinking about like a little bit. So today I wanted to share just a little bit of the concept of agentic workflows,
Mm.
and when it comes to agents or agentic, right? So think about. So I guess the way how I like to describe it sometimes is the non-agentic work, right? So the non-agentic means Typically, when you interact with a chatbot or like an LLM-based or language model-based application, where you could ask a question and you say, write me a script, write me a poem, write a paragraph for me. You're just doing one instruction and then you're expecting something to come back and be, I guess, the way how you wanted it. And sometimes you have to like iterate multiple times, but you're talking to it as, do this for me, and then, the output comes back. When it comes to a workflow or an agentic workflow, first is you're trying to describe what it is that you want to do, and you try to define this, I guess, from the basics. You have this deterministic flow of things, right? So when it comes to security, you might have some specific steps that you usually take, right, when you investigate something, right? And so the concept of an agentic workflow would be how can we plug in this LLM-based agent, which can help us reason over this deterministic flow in each step of the way. Because even though we do have this type of recipes to investigate, every single step in the recipe, there is usually some type of thinking or reasoning that security analysts perform, right? So the LLM-based agent is some type of, let's say, application, right? Let's call it that is going to use the language model to understand the analyst's intent, like the question, right? The initial question, let's say, and then it would kind of help. It would use the language model to help reason over that question and be able to come up with some type of plan. And then as the workflow, the steps are being executed, there is always some type of feedback loop and try to reason and choose like which way do I go, right? Once again, you might have a very deterministic flow for specific investigations, but there is still a lot of reasoning and thinking, a lot of uncertainty in some steps where we expect the LLM-based application to help us, right? Reason, right? And then we provide this agent a set of tools. Some people, call in skills, a set of tools that could be a, let's say, Python script. It could be a PowerShell script, right? That would allow the agent to interact with the world, right? Interact with APIs, interact with databases, right? So that's the concept of an agent, how you can use an LLM for the reasoning and thinking, and then how you can provide tools so that the agent can interact with the world and be able to work in this iterative loop with specific boundaries, right? Boundaries, for example, where you say, when you get to this stage or this state in the workflow, make sure you check with the human, or make sure you only, focus on this area. So you try to, create some boundaries, around these agents. So that would be first the fundamentals and the basics of one agentic workflow in cybersecurity, right?
Man, that's awesome. So I'm viewing this. I mean, is it fair? Can I like generalize this as, I don't want to say like automating playbooks with LLMs, but I feel like that's probably a starting point if for a lot of folks is like take these typical well thought out plans that you've got in place, which might be some sort of a playbook for responding to an alert or responding to a type of detection or whatnot, and then figuring out where in that can we make it more automated, but using LLMs to enhance the decision-making process. Is that a way of looking at it?
Yes. And there are specific ways. For example, I saw a question as you were talking about this, a question of like, how is this different? Or so is this like SOAR, for example, right? SOAR playbooks. And that's a great question. So when it comes to SOAR or any type of, I would say like deterministic flow that you say, this is how it goes, right? Usually you add the concept of conditions. If this happens, right, this happens. If this other thing happens, then this other thing happens. So usually you determine what set of conditions you believe might apply based on the use case. And that's totally fine, right? When it comes to data science or AI in general, every time I talk to a data scientist, they say, my job is to prove when not to use ML. Right? Versus some other people say, use ML for everything. No. There are some use cases where it still makes sense, if your step-by-step process works all the time, that's it, right? That's amazing. But there will be some workflows where some of these conditions start getting out of hand, right?
Mhm,
Start getting out
mhm,
of hand, and sometimes you will have to build multiple conditions for something that, for example, in natural language, if I respond to you in multiple sentences as talking to you, I expect a language model or you to say, "Oh, okay, you mean this, so let me do this thing for you."
mhm,
Right? So it was a natural language interaction between a user to another user, and when you build these conditions for workflows, sometimes you're not dealing with natural language, right?
right.
You're trying to say, well, let me find this key from this output, and maybe I'll try to figure
Mhm,
out how the conditions should work are very structured, and sometimes you have to build multiple conditions. But if you have something that understands text, a paragraph, they could say, okay, based on your paragraph, I need to do this. That level of conditioning and understanding of the input, in my opinion, is the sometimes like the emergent, like this new capability, right, that we're
mhm,
having
mhm,
with LLM-based applications, right? And the other thing also is that some of these workflows, requires enrichments where, for example, as the data is going through a workflow, right, you could say, let's classify these things in this way. Let's maybe extract some, I don't know, like notes and relationships from this part and put it here. So there is a lot of processes where, in my opinion, LLMs are good at, versus you trying to structurally trying to build the scripts and regex, scripts just to kind of capture parts of the input in every single step in the flow, right? So hopefully that gives a little bit of more context into why this is like a little bit different than just your typical SOAR workflows.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think this is Roberto, I really first off, I like the way that you kind of answered and went through that, but the way that I'm like envisioning this or hearing it is taking like okay, so if we think about maybe like the basics of SOAR automation and stuff like that, it's trying to think through the different things an analyst would do and then trying to automate some of those different steps, right? So it might be really simple, like detection fires for a network-based indicator. The analyst goes and enriches that network indicator. Well, maybe I can automate part of that, bring that back into the analysis flow. And then did any results match on it, so on and so forth. Like a lot of it seems like just taking that human thought process and then just turning it into an if loop or a
Yeah.
bunch of if loops that kind of walk through. To me, this feels what you're describing as so much more powerful, which is like, I don't want to just automate the different if loops and whatnot. I actually want to take it to the next level. And I want to start to replicate like the thought
Mhm.
processes that
Yeah,
go behind it, not the actions that have to be taken, but actual thought
exactly.
processes between like, I love it. Here's a paragraph of stuff, right? Find the key important parts of this and then action accordingly based on what you see inside of there, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And to me, like that's where you start kind of balancing through an investigation, where you're
Hmm.
balancing the unstructured data that
Hmm.
flows through your pipelines of an investigation, and your structured data, which is right your security event logs. But so, for example, what if you push the notes of security analysts through this process,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
you know what I mean? So now you have something that would say, oh, I can understand, let's say, these parts of your nodes right away, because I'm a language model, and a large language model would understand very well exactly what the intent, the tone, like all the impactful
Hmm.
context of your data, unstructured data, and then be able to make a decision to what to run next.
Hmm.
That's something that you cannot just simply programmatically with Python if conditions you can do, right?
Yeah, all right, all right. Man, I
So
like that.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
pretty awesome. Can you feed it like historical investigation reports?
100%. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think that's one of the things also that we're kind of like thinking about is, it's like, how do you drive the workflow? Do you
Hmm.
let the language model to figure out what's next all the time, and even reason and plan on its own all the time? Like just
Hmm.
like wave your hands and be like, tell me what to do next.
Yeah.
Or you drive a lot of the uh all of these workflows, or you feed this experience or expertise from multiple security analysts. Like, for example, I was talking to someone from a good friend of mine, Leo, who owns, Graphistry, for example. And in
Mm-hmm.
Graphistry, in the company, they're actually doing some cool thing with agents. They talk about the concepts of recipes, right? So every single security analyst has a recipe for specific things. Can we feed some of these recipes as some type of context as part of the reasoning process? And then as you do investigations, you can learn on like what other recipes are possible, but you have some type of starting point
Mm.
on the reasoning. That way you don't just reason because you trust the language model, but you're actually saying, hey, this is how, some recipes were executed before for this type of scenario. That's to me the part that is fascinating. And of course, I don't want to say that this is 100% bulletproof. I'm just saying that this is an area of research that it's fascinating and very interesting,
Yeah.
right, to tackle, right?
No, I like that. So we've had interestingly enough, there's been a few folks who have chimed in. John brought up this idea, and I'm going kind of somewhat chronologically here. John brought up this idea of like it would be cool if you could feed TTPs and playbooks for groups to help with attribution on the fly. And then here's like the cool part. So maybe you know what's coming next in the attack chain. So to that point, John, like one of the things that I actually use a lot of Gen AI capabilities for in detection engineering and stuff is that exact outcome. Where
Yeah.
now my questions are a little simpler than what Roberto's talking about here. But what I'll do is I'll actually say, here's this thing that I'm writing a detection for, right? Based, go tap into MITRE, go tap into some other sources. What is likely going to happen next? Like, what is the next action that may occur? So to speak hypothetically, right? Let's say I'm writing a detection for like credential harvesting or something like that, and I see that an LSAS process has been dumped. That's a great detection to have, but you're right. I want to know what comes next in the kill chain. I want to know what comes next in some sort of attack lifecycle. So I'm going to reach out and I'm going to look and see like, wow, what might come next, and then help me write a detection for that too. But Roberto, you brought up something else that I mentioned, or I wanted to bring up, or I wanted to ask you about. I think you mentioned like also giving these LLMs, giving these agentic flows the ability to interact with other things via PowerShell, Python scripts, so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
What
Yes.
can you expand on that a little more?
Yes. Which is, to me, the part that is also the research area where it's also fascinating, because I think that eventually, so right now, in my opinion, we try to rely a lot on the knowledge of, or let's say, like acquire knowledge of these language models, where we say, write me a script, right? So that's a perfect example where you're relying on like, yeah, it will know how to give me a fundamental, start or something very basic that I can work on. So you're relying a lot on that. The concept of exposing an agent or an LLM with an agent to tooling, now you're saying, yeah, you're good at reasoning. I like that you understand language very well, but let me expose you to this thing that you might not be aware of. And I want you just to give me some context around it. And even like, for example, pick the right API to call, or the right database to call, for example, right? So what that means is, one tool could be, this is something that I was exploring when I was in DEF CON, and I talk a little bit in DEF CON. So think about, for example, the Microsoft Graph API, right? Where if you look into the Open API definitions, not the OpenAI, right? Open API, right?
Mm-hmm.
Definitions. There is hundreds and thousands of ways how you can call the API, right? So to me, when you do an investigation, you could say, well, this is the API for maybe getting alerts. This is the API to get context from the alerts, artifacts. It's an API to query a user information. So usually we are the ones that define what those APIs could be, right?
Right.
With the concept of an agent with an LLM, you could actually say, okay, let's use some techniques in here that could help us improve this process. This process. I don't want to write all of these multiple scripts that are usually used for an investigation. So what you can say is like, let's take all the APIs from security, Microsoft Graph endpoints, and let's put them into a database. And then let's make the agent, the moment it needs to query context about an alert, for example. I want the agent to say, okay, let me go to my database based on your question. I'm going to pick the right API to call, and I'm going to dynamically generate the API call and be able to call that API and then get context back in and then be able to use it throughout my investigation. That level of, in my opinion, of additional capabilities that these autonomous agents can have is fascinating. And you don't have to sometimes describe, like, use this PowerShell script, use this Python script.
Right,
You
right,
can
right.
you can just say, hey, here are the 500 API definitions, and what one technique that we use for that is retrieval augmented generation, which is, once again, when I heard that before, I was like, I don't know what the hell that is, but the very simple process is how you can be able to take the question or the intent of the user, and if you have data such as, let's say, API definitions in a vector database where it's represented as numbers, you can do a similarity search between your question. This is the basics of
Yeah.
RAG. You
Yeah.
take the question, you say, how similar is my question to all this data here? And let's pull the top 5 similar things. So if you say, I want to query this alert, right, using the Graph API, then the retrieval process will be, oh, you can use these 5 APIs that are related to alert information. So now we could say, let's pick the right API, and then let's call it. So you can use that type of process to add this concept of picking the right tools and then be able to execute them so that then you can gather more context and more context through your investigation. So that's what I meant with tools and APIs and how you can improve your workflows. Yeah.
I love it, man. Roberto, I hate to say this. We only have like 2 minutes left. And I know, dude, I'm telling you, I think I told you at DEF CON, I'm saying it again too. We need to have like a multi-hour session to just like explore all this in general. But first off, like thank you for being on here. I don't mean to like cut you short because we don't want to hear anymore. Like I want to spend the next like hour talking about this. However, I'm gonna keep it to our 30-minute window there and let everyone know that like Roberto's working on some really cool stuff. Really, really cool stuff. And like for anyone who's curious, I think we dropped some ways to get in touch with him, ways to get a hold of him. But Roberto, what's a good ways for folks to get a hold of you or learn and watch what you're doing, what you're developing these days?
Yes, so I would say LinkedIn, to be honest. Like that's the platform where it's easy to have great conversations through the chat. So when I open my Twitter chat messages, I just got a lot of crazy
spam. It's too much spam now, man.
So I would say LinkedIn, and of course a lot of my research I also share it in Twitter. But Twitter is more locked down to talk, but LinkedIn it's pretty open. So yeah, just reach out to me in LinkedIn. So my name with Microsoft, and if you put like maybe security research, it will show up in there without my picture. And then when you click on it and I accepted it, then you can see the everything. So
there we go. Awesome. All right, everyone. There's a way to get in touch with Roberto. We also posted his GitHub. There's a lot of cool projects he's worked on over the years and have released in open source and things like that. Definitely recommend checking those out. And the one other thing I'll throw out too, Roberto, you've been a huge inspiration for me because anytime I want to go learn how to use Jupyter better, I go look at you because you guys have done some awesome research with that. So I like to always promote that too. And then last but not least, everyone on the Lima Charlie side, coming soon, and I'm going to post a link to this I should have had this one teed up as well. We are going to be hosting the Mission Control Conference October 2nd through 4th, where there's going to be a ton more. Oh, Nicole beat me to it. A ton more types of discussions on like super technical approaches and things like this. But with that said, Roberto, thank you so much for being here, man. It's great to see you again. Glad you made it back home safely. And we got to get you on here at some point, man. We'd love to keep talking about this, but take care, sir. Have a great day. And thanks everyone for joining us.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Take care, y'all.
But